it's really my great pleasure to introduce Hilton Als, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and essayist for The New Yorker, the writer of incredible books, namely White Girls, which both has my favorite sentence of the 21st century. The Ego, M dash, what a racket. Truly one of my favorite sentences, and also kind of helped me understand my mother at a profound level. So I feel incredibly indebted to Hilton on a personal level, but also he is one of our true public intellectuals, and we share an abiding fascination and curiosity for Alice Neel. So Hilton, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ella. That was beautiful.
So I had the good fortune in preparing to talk to you of reading everything you've read on Alice Neel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the first essay you write about her. It's in The New Yorker. And it's an essay that actually starts off with you talking about you and your father and how he would take you from your neighborhood in Brooklyn to the city. And I grew up in Queens. And so
you know where I speak. Yeah.
Every borough kid knows that nobody calls Manhattan Manhattan.
That's right.
Manhattan is the city.
That's right.
And so I kind of wanted to have this conversation, maybe start off our thinking about Neel, who, as we know, is having this amazing moment, and she's
happy for her.
I know. It's extraordinary for these pictures to be hanging right now at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But it was interesting to me in reading that essay that you had laid down your father, his curiosity, your curiosity, Alice Neel's curiosity, and it sort of seemed like a little bit like a love letter to New York.
Oh.
And I wonder if maybe we just start there. Like, what about Neel gets you to be talking about things so intimate as well as New York?
Well, I think that's a incredibly beautiful question, and it sort of fills me up. And I think I should begin with how I first saw her. I was an art history student at Columbia, and there was no such thing in universities, and you know this, as the AFAM department in the 80s, or AFAM anything, really. You have to study oceanic art, or the arts of Africa is what they used to call it. And I grew up in New York. And so I was always looking for those artists that represented something of that experience. And one day I was just sort of at Avery Library, and there was a yellow catalog, and it said Alice Neel. And I started leafing through it, and the top of my head blew off, because here was a woman who was not only painting people that I knew, but she was painting a landscape that was completely recognizable to me. I think when I talk about Alice and the city, it is about her love of New York. I had the great good fortune of visiting her youngest son, Hartley, and his wife in their family home in Vermont, and they had built Alice a studio there. And it was very moving to go and see her easel and her radio and so on. And Hartley said she couldn't wait to get out of here and go back to the city after her 10 weeks or whatever it was that she would spend up there. And I think it has something to do with the ways in which New Yorkers speak, the tempo of the city. Often it's sort of cliched, fast-paced, but it's actually a small town in a very weirdly configured space. And I think that Alice's love of New York had everything to do with what Jane Jacobs tells us, right? Is that it's a place of accidents, that you walk down the street and you see the grocer, or you run into your ex-lover's friend. It's a place in which stimulation is not contingent on going to one area. It's going to many areas, and it's also sort of New York as one area of experience. So I think that she is our poet, the way that Lorca was our poet of the city, the way that Edwin Denby was our poet of the critic of the city, or Elizabeth Hardwick was our critic of the city. They are all, without reservation, interested in what Elizabeth Hardwick said. I like the main street of any place. So New York has many main streets, and Alice was that poet and that visualizer of those main streets. And they were streets that people didn't know, largely in the museum world or the art world in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. This is a woman who's working for 45 years to try to understand where she lives and the people that live there, and the people she lives with.
That's so beautiful. And you brought up Elizabeth Hardwick, and which is uncanny to me, because we've
been doing that all day.
We've been doing this all day. For those, we were just in the green room, and Hilton and I just have all these moments of overlap, which I do think must have so much to do with the fact that we are borough kids, and that we grew up with that view of the city. It was a destination. It was an aspiration.
Yes.
It wasn't out of reach. It was always right there. And yet there was this
there's a bridge.
There's a bridge.
Yes.
There's a tunnel.
Yes.
Even when you knew you were from somewhere just slightly off.
That's right.
All kinds of things about it. But Hardwick has this great line about essays, where she says, essays as a form, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but she says, essays as a form are great because they don't require that the reader be as knowledgeable as the writer about the thing that they're writing about, that all they require of the reader is an intelligent curiosity.
That's right.
And it made me wonder about, you are, of course, one of the great essayists.
Oh.
To think about Neil's project as kind of essayistic in a sense.
I mean, absolutely. I think that the word essay is from the French, and it means to try, to attempt. And one of the reasons that I love poets and poetry so much is no one ever asks them if it's true or false, right? They're giving you this experience. And Alice, similarly, is giving you the experience. Is this really the person? I don't know. But what she's really giving you is the experience of having met this person and having that exchange and these moments with that person. So her attempt to understand who is inside what she sees, to me, is the poetry and the supreme achievement of her art, is the trying, is the attempt. The conclusion is gorgeous, right?
Right.
But even more importantly, the frame is about Alice's willingness to go there, and her willingness to try. Not many artists, whether they're writers or painters or skateboarders or whatever, are willing to say, I'm going to attempt to understand this person and this situation and this city. I think she's a supreme experimentalist. I think we need to know more from critics who are coming up and writers who care about her incredible ability to experiment with form and vision and heart.
I like that, this quality of experimentation and this attempt, because I think one of the things that happens in front of really great Neil paintings is the whole idea of whether they're finished or not is kind of suspended, right? Like she's showing you, you'll often see the line started.
That's right.
It's just, nope, she goes again. Like, obviously she could have painted all of that out. She doesn't.
That's right.
Right? Like she leaves so many traces of where she was going. And then there's often just all that negative space in the background, right? Like, just like, oh yeah, no.
That's right.
This is not what's important right now.
That's right. I really sort of, in those late pictures, Self-Portrait and a number of those other works that feel sort of sketched in, I always think of jazz musicians like Cecil Taylor.
Oh, nice.
And who invited the experience in. So, for instance, there's a great story someone told me of Cecil was recording, and a musician had to bring their kid, and the kid was playing with the ball, and the musician was trying to stop the kid. And Cecil said, no, 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 don't do that. That's what's happening. Right. Now, that's part of the recording. That's part of the experience. And so in films of Alice, I always get goose pimples thinking about this. She's painting, I think, twins on the floor. Do you remember this section? And she's painting, and the mother goes to try to arrange them. Right. And she says, no, 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 don't do that. Right. It's very morbid right now, she said, and let it be what it is. So it always brings me back to that brilliant Diane Arbus quote of, when I go to see a subject, I don't arrange them, I rearrange myself to suit them. And to me, it's an extremely generous soul, like Alice, Cecil as a musician, Arbus as a photographer, who can rearrange the self. Right. To have that conversation. It's an act of humility.
It is.
And chance, and chance.
So much chance, and so much, one of the things I've been arrested by Neil, is that she would paint, I don't know how else to say this, to your sense of her noticing the morbidity about the children. She paints dead people. She paints, there are, I think, 3 pictures of people in coffins. Yes. In Neil's oeuvre. This is very unusual.
That's right.
And at first, I had a kind of conventional bourgeois, is it? And then I realized, what crazy honesty, because all of us who have stood in front of an open casket
want to turn away.
We want to turn away, and yet we are very curious.
That's right.
We want to touch, we want to know, that is one of the profoundest of existential moments.
Helen, have you ever seen, I'm very fascinated by elephants, for instance, and I like reading about them. And when an elephant falls, the other elephants gather around and they try to poke the dead elephant into living. And then they start to grieve because they realize that the elephant is not coming back. Right. And it's extraordinary that you brought that up, because when I look at Alice's pictures of mortality, I see someone who doesn't want this to happen, knows it has to happen, and it has happened at the same time. Right. And so many of us write about or make art about, we don't want it to happen, or we turned away, or is it better not to look? That's the question that Arbus asked. And would it have been better if I didn't see it? Right. Would it have made me a nicer person? I think Alice's, those 3 stages are something that we can really, that she did for us, and that we don't really have the right to turn away from her experience, because how hard was that to do? And then to remember it, and paint it. It's not like they're coming to the studio.
Right, exactly.
You have to go home and remember. Right. So it's like with her portrait of her daughter Isabetta, it was slashed by one of her lovers, and she had to paint that painting from memory.
And it's such a hard
and a gone child. Yeah, that child is gone.
I just want to say for folks who are listening who don't know, Neil has a very extraordinary set of experiences as a mother. She loses her first child to diphtheria before it's 1, and her second child is basically kind of taken away from her by her father, by the child's father, to be raised by the child's grandparents in Cuba. And in the wake of these profound losses, Neil has, breakdowns, and there's a moment when the child returns, and she's a young 6-year-old.
She's 6-year-old. Yeah.
And Neil paints her. The painting hangs now at the Metropolitan in the show, naked, right? And her nakedness is extraordinary too, because she is naked before God and naked before her mother, who is...
And it's a challenge. Can you love me?
Can you love me?
Yeah.
And I think Neil's painting is partly unsure.
Yes.
I do not know if I can love you because if I love you,
I'm afraid you'll be taken away again.
they're going to take you away from me. So
That's
I
right.
can't love you. There's so much tenderness in Neil's paintings, for instance, of the young grandson,
Yes.
the baby. This painting drives
Isn't that
me
amazing?
bananas.
With what Elizabeth Hardwick might call his ripe cluster of sexuality.
It is ripe, all right.
Yes.
I mean, his little penis and his little balls, it's
Yes.
all kind of open like how a puppy shows you
Yes.
its stomach.
Yes.
Vulnerability is extraordinary.
Yes.
But with Elisabetta, there is a hardness, and with her portraits of the dead, there's also a hardness of...
You cannot do that kind of work and not have something in you that wills you to move forward constantly. Right. It's more than resilience, I think. It's not detachment. Right. It's something, let's call it a kind of ability to empathize and to not detach, but to see at the same time what life does to us. And what life does to us, it kills us, we die, we lose things all the time, children, homes, right? Elizabeth Bishop tells us this, the art of losing is not hard to master. And I think that Alice is very much part of that poem. The art of losing is not hard to master. I've lost countries, Bishop says. Right. I've lost lovers. It's not hard to do. And so this relinquishing of things, places, memories, makes you not only resilient, but it makes you a kind of a wariness about accepting the finality of anything. That's the word I was looking for. She's wary of even the fixed nature of a painting or the memorialization of a daughter. That might change tomorrow. But what she's always in is the present. And that's what life is giving her, is this moment. As in her amazing one of the late masterpieces, the Andy Warhol portrait. And he said to Harley that it's the best portrait of me anyone has ever done. And it's because it's almost as if Alice is looking at him and understanding that he's a mother too, that he has mothered these marginalized people. And what's left of a mother really is her progeny.
And her scars.
And her scars. Their birth scars. Right. He's given birth to Jackie, Holly, Candy.
Yep.
And given them a home. And withheld money to keep it going, has fed them to keep it going, has memorialized them on film to keep it going. To me, it's a portrait of identification about motherhood.
Oh, that's wonderful to see Warhol as a mother like that.
Yes.
I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
I don't know quite how to do it. It makes me
You can ask me anything.
But
don't be embarrassed. We're here together.
So here you are, a Black gay man,
yes.
and I'm a white gay woman. And Alice Neel is one of the most heterosexual, straight, white ladies you are ever going to meet.
She had a lot of fun.
She had a lot of fun. I think she really liked herself some men.
Yes, she did.
And she, she said all kinds of crazy, very suspicious and antagonistic things about lesbians. But in this moment, we're in a moment of incredibly identitarian politics, in which lots of folks are drawing one-to-one equations about who gets to talk about what, who gets to do what. And here we are bonded around someone who's profoundly othered to both of us. And her capacity to make these pictures.
I don't think I'm going to interrupt you.
Like, what do we do? Yeah. Help me out of this hole I'm in
we
here.
We both love women.
We do both love women, don't we?
And so I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that we love women.
Right.
And we like women in particular who are self-created without the patriarchy.
Right.
And who do it on their own. And she did that on her own. In fact, she was resistant, very resistant to the patriarchy, right? you couldn't have called her a feminist because in those days, that was a bad word. It meant that you were a lesbian.
It meant you didn't like men.
You didn't like men. What we have in Alice is the same kind of lady that we're attracted to. Right. She's an independent, strong person who's raising her kids and doing the best that she can.
And making pictures like this, which is...
Look at how available this woman is to us.
And it's also what women look like.
Yes.
There's also this quality of like...
You can't, I mean...
When we're naked, it all kind of falls all over the place.
She said, listen, all of us have said dumb things in the world. And because she's no longer here, we can't get her to revise or rethink. But when you look at that work, you cannot say, well, as a heterosexual... She's not anything but what she is in this work, which is loving this moment. Look how available this woman is to us and to her. Mm-hmm. And I think that we don't let our identity politics get in the way of her work, because she wouldn't do it to us. Right. We would just go to her door and she'd say, "Hi, I'm Alice. Do you want to sit or get naked or whatever?" I think that we love her because we love strong, independent women who do it on their own. And she did. Right. She had to wait a long time to be acknowledged for it, but we would have been there for her. We sure would have been there sitting for her and having vodka and all of those great things with her, just to let her know that she wasn't alone. Right. And she makes us feel less alone, I think, too.
Oh, her pictures have always made me feel less alone. Even as a adolescent, I know you and I share a kind of adolescent wandering through museums in New York City. I always felt something about, and I've never really quite known how to put this into words. There's something about that electric blue outline around the body that I always really responded to, that I knew that my skin was one of my most beautiful sensory organisms. It covered my whole body. I was always interested in it. And that Neil gives us that back in a pictorial form.
This is a great story that after we did the show, I was so grateful to David for letting us do the Alice Neal show. In 2017, I got an email from Lisa Phillips. And in the email, she said, there are actually two people who wrote amazing things about Alice. And Lisa's letter said, she was the first artist I ever asked to come to our school. And she came to the school, and she said she asked me, would I pose naked one day? And I said no, a decision I've since regretted. And then she said, and my dear, you must never pluck your eyebrows. Eyebrows are the most beautiful things on a human. And then she said, and then she had us come to her apartment, and she fed us cheap caviar and vodka at 10 in the morning. Who doesn't want to hang out with Alice? Right. Right?
No.
So she's aware of your body, my body.
Right.
And also joy.
Right.
There's so much joy in her work.
So much joy.
And that's part of what we're responding to as well, is that she's really building a community of people in these New York pictures.
Right.
I don't remember, I can't imagine that she painted more than 5 pictures of Pennsylvania home. It's the one of the house.
Right.
Her mother, her grandmother, her father dead. And she'd never...
I mean, there's a still life that kind of there's a late still life in the Met show that doesn't look like it's in a New York City apartment, if you know what I mean. It looks like...
Maybe it was in Vermont.
Right. It looks like a country house kind of still life. Yeah. It's very joyous. But it doesn't...
She wanted a different life.
Yeah, she did want a different life. Yeah. And she makes... One of the things I admire about her is that every choice she made is contrary. You know, everyone's living downtown. She goes and lives uptown.
That's right.
Folks are making minimalism. She's like, I'm just going to stick right here with these old-fashioned portraits. I wonder if we can just drop back to New York a little bit.
Sure.
So, New York, capital of the 20th century. 21st century, probably not so much. Right? Like, things are going to change.
Right.
Here you have this woman, this oil painter, painting portraits, hanging at the Met finally after all these years, and a whole bevy of people kind of in her wake now painting portraiture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 20 years ago, if you had told me in 2021, 22, portraiture is going to be all the rave in the art world, I would have been like, child, you better take your $5 and go to the OTB because this is not where this is going to roll, right? So what do you think it is about this old technology, this old form, 400 or 500 years of oil painting, 400 or 500 years of a certain kind of Western frontal portrait? Mm-hmm. Why do we need it so much now?
It's an excellent question, and I think that I might take your $5 and go to OTB, but before I answer it, but since there's a time constraint, I think it has something to do with what David Hockney, one of our great portraitists, said, which is that ultimately people are interested in people. Right. And this title of the Met show, People Come First, I think is an exemplary sign and title of what has happened through a lot of these various stages of art and creation, minimalism. There was a denial. There was an erasure. There was power, right? There was power in minimalism. There was power in the market for minimalism, and there was power in the individual artist's relationship to that work and as a group. I think that what started to happen sort of post-Warhol death is that it started to splinter in many ways out into representational expressionism, Italian neorealism, German expressionism. There was always a push to it, but everybody was kind of afraid to go back to it until relatively recently, that it meant that you were less intellectually engaged with the work. And I think that someone like Alice proves, are you crazy? The rigor, emotional and intellectual, to do this kind of work is supreme, because it's not imaginative and it's not non-labor intensive like a lot of minimalism is. It's labor intensive, and it's also about connecting. Right. And I think that we have gone through these stages to return to ourselves, to return to this idea that we have value, right, for each other and to ourselves.
That's really, really very beautiful. And it helps me think about some quality of her work that, how to say it, like, she's empathetic, but sometimes there's a danger in empathy.
But she's not sentimental.
Right.
Ever.
But the danger in empathy, sometimes you put yourself in someone else's shoes, you're in their shoes, like you're taking up too much room.
That's right.
Alice doesn't take up that room.
No, she doesn't.
So that warts and all quality. And then, of course, she knew she didn't ever let anybody pay her to sit for her.
Oh, no.
Because she knew, I got to show you the UIC.
That's right. You can't buy me.
You want me to see.
Why wouldn't we be in love with her? We can't buy her. We still can't buy her.
We still can't buy her. I know. And you can't buy that woman.
No, you can't.
That's the other thing. Like, none of those women are available the way in the history of all those other white nude women in the Metropolitan have in fact been available.
That's right. She's not commodifiable in the least. Right. Because you can't commodify the spirit and its spiritual art.
All right. We've got questions.
Okay.
Dun, 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 dun. All right. Well, this is just random, and I need to know the answer. Will we see a production of Hilton's In Progress theater piece in 2021 or 2022?
Oh, thank you so much. We did Portrait of Jason on the radio. Oh, I'll send it to you. Sorry.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoddy research on the interview.
No. But it did very well. Uh-huh. And we have 3 new productions coming up. 3 late Tennessee Williams plays where he begins to not speak through female characters, but to speak directly as a male artist. So I just did those 3, and that was a great experience. And we have great stars like Andre Holland and Michelle Williams. Beautiful. So those are coming up, but we're slowly trying to get Jason on stage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. If whoever sends in that question, thank you, because I didn't know about it, and I'm
terrible at that stuff, so I'm going to send it to you.
I'm so great. Okay, so here's a question for both Hilton and Helen. Hilton, what did you learn about Alice while you were putting together your London show?
Oh, the thing that I learned about Alice putting together the London show was to see her in a different light, because the light in London is pearly gray, so the paintings look completely different than they did here at David Zwirner, and it was to see the ways in which the installation affected me and the viewer very differently than it did here. London has very low ceiling, and Alice looked much more less graphic. The line was less graphic, and it was much more about the space and the work being one continuum because of the light in London.
I think I love that you bring that up, because something my brother is a wine expert, and he writes about wine for a living. And of course, in the wine world, there's terroir, and they don't have any. They're not hung up about that, about its authenticity or anything like that. There's like, these grapes taste this way because they come from this soil on this side of the mountain in this year,
part of the world,
right? You know, it's very clear. But I think art has real terroir too, and I think it's really, really evident in light more than anything else.
I remember that feeling with when it was at the Tate, I believe they had an Agnes Martin show, and it looked, you could barely see it because of the skylight and because of the gray of London.
Yes, I saw the Agnes Martin show at the Tate too, and I at the time I was like, oh, it's just, you know, the Tate's got bad lighting. But I know that
the city.
It's the city, and it has a overcastness that's, of course, antithetical to where Martin was painting. But Alice also, there's a certain kind of that, I don't know how to say this, as a transplanted New Yorker living in L.A. The claustrophobia of the Manhattan apartment, the heat, that feeling of compression. I think it's in the pictures too. Right? Like, you know, those seated portraits in the apartment.
Yes.
They're on that same chair. That's where the chair is. Like, you know, that's New York, man. Like, everything's on lock in its place. It doesn't have this sort of spread out.
And we better hurry up because those kids are coming home from school. So I have a set amount of hours to work. I have a certain amount of hours to clean, to cook dinner.
That's right.
And so those kids are coming home, and we have to concentrate.
Right.
So there's an enormous discipline in those paintings. I couldn't do it.
No, I do think, I mean, that's something Simone Lee says about being an artist and a mother. It's like, before she had her child, she'd go and get a plate of chicken rice and cry and, you know, wonder what she was going to do. And the minute the child comes, she's like, oh, I'm in the studio. I got 3 hours. It's just like, bam, the focus.
That's right.
And the intensity of that. And to think about that in Alice's brushwork.
That's right.
Right? To think about, she doesn't have time to take away the mark from me that isn't right.
It doesn't have to be about the martyrdom of the artist.
Right.
She doesn't have time for the martyrdom of the artist that, oh, you know, I'm so exhausted after that brushstroke. She's like, I got to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, she does seem singularly, I can never pronounce this word correctly, indefatigable.
Yes.
Right?
Indefatigable.
Indefatigable.
Yes.
I love that word, but only on print.
Yeah.
But there are those wonderful shots of the New York apartment where the hallway is just lined.
That's right.
With painting.
That's right.
And to keep painting in the face of so little attention.
That's right.
Right? We live in this world where we all get all this attention, Instagram attention, press attention. And she didn't get any of it.
No, she didn't. And that is, that italicizes her commitment to the work.
Right.
That it wasn't about being part of a group. It wasn't about going to dinner with the right people. It wasn't about, well, my husband owes X things. It was about this commitment to the human spirit.
Right. And I wonder if I wonder if you agree. I think one of the things I love about Neil, and I think it's a criteria I have for maybe art even in general, I love the stuff made by someone when you look at it and you think like you would have made this with a nobody ever.
That's right. She could have been doing this on brown paper bags, and
Right.
there would be floor to ceiling of brown paper bags because it's her.
Right.
It's her. It's not a gig. It's
Right.
not. It's a wonderful thing that Ntozake Shange said. I am not a part-time poet. I am not a poet who does X. I don't even know what that is. I am a poet, and that's what Alice is.
Right.
I am a painter.
She is.
Yeah.
And it's that ceaseless, endless, infinite curiosity
Mm-hmm.
about the other, not because the other, I mean, this is Levinas, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have ethics because we're alike.
Right.
We have ethics actually because we are different,
That's right.
right? It is your difference from me, not your similarity.
It is
to
the
me.
only way to make a civilized society. Because if you start talking about the sameness and celebrating the sameness, then you're fascism. You're fascism, right?
Right.
Or you have countries that are given over to a particular ideology. One of the things that's great about New York, and it can really get messed up here like any place else, is the fact that you cannot deny that everybody is different.
Right. Right.
And they all come from the same place, which is the land of difference.
Right.
So whether Jews, blacks, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Latvians, we all come from some other place.
Right.
And that's the given.
That is
It's the only given.
right.
How did she love that? And that's a lot to love.
It is a lot to love, but it is the great, not even Giuliani could destroy
That's right.
the great magic of New York City.
That's right.
Hilton,
Yes, ma'am.
it has been such a
we're
pleasure.
done?
having you.
Done?
We're already done, although you and I know could go on for hours and hours.